So I'm going to be doing a June wrap up of all the stuff that I read in June. I figured it's better go by month, and have this posted just kind of like it wraps up all 3 months that I have not done any reading wrap ups. So I ended up reading You Got Alien Trouble. So this is 7 Brides for 7 Alien Brothers. Now this was 7.5. So this one here, I do feel like you don't have to read this in order. Like you don't have to start with, you don't have to start with the first book in order to understand this. I was able to understand the story without, any problems. So this one here is more of a novella. And I'm not a huge fan of the cover because it doesn't look like an alien romance. So this one here I gave 4 stars. So we have Rosalie and Harkin. And I said this was pretty much like a cute and sweet novella. I'd say like this series is very simple. Like I'll talk about it like for the last part of the month. But this is a very simple setup for a story. Like if you're looking for more of a sci-fi alien type of romance, but you don't want like super complicated world building, like some, sci-fi alien romances can be very complex. Like they add a lot of world building and you're like, I have no idea what's going on. So this here, it's very simple because it's almost like it could essentially be humans in this point, because they're on this planet that is very similar to Earth. Very similar to Earth. So you have like how many humans that are up on this planet, and it's very much like how it was like back in the day, like farmland. A lot of people are owning like farms. You have like a small little town that you can go into and get supplies. And then you have different families who obviously, it's self-sufficient, people who are self-sufficient. You have people who obviously are making stuff on their farm. I almost kind of like that, where it's more of like you learn to, take care of yourself. So you're self-sufficient. You have farm animals that you can go and get, food from, chickens, you get eggs. You can kill your own beef, kill your own cows to get beef, if you want to. Same thing with pigs. You can slaughter your own pigs and all that stuff. I've had family that were farmers, in the East Coast. I had an aunt that lived on a farm, and she'd slaughter her own pigs and her chickens and all that stuff. She was badass. I'll give her that, because for myself, if I had to slaughter my own animals to eat them, I'd probably be a vegetarian. It's a very simple setting. So you have this farm that this woman has, and what was it? I can't remember now. I can't write because I didn't write down. I haven't been writing down like a whole bunch of stuff. But the synopsis, I think what it was is, yeah, she ended up like inheriting this farm, and this one guy he's a land grabber, so he wants to like suck up as much land as he can. So she ends up helping this alien that's wounded in her barn. And so she kind of like helps him, brings him back to health again. And he essentially helps her with this land grabber, this guy who owns this farmland right, next to her, who basically wants to marry her so he could take over her land. Super fucking creepy dude. And I liked it. I thought it was sweet. It was a quick novella. And like I said, this is very, very simple, like farmland. You know, you got like some alien, you got different alien species that landed on this planet too, landed on that planet. And I can't remember the name of the planet. I think it starts with a C. So I was like, well, let me go back to the beginning. And I thought it was a cute book, so I ended up going back to the beginning of it. I'll talk about those. I'll talk about those ones now. So I ended up getting into the Seven Brides for Seven Alien Brothers. This is obviously a take on, like, what was it? What's it called again? Seven Brides for Seven Brothers or something like that. I think it's like an old, it's like an old movie or play or something. I don't think I ever got into it. I don't think I've ever seen it. But it's kind of like based on that. And so the first one is Artek. So this is all Honey Phillips. And so far I've given these all like 4 stars. I enjoyed them. So we have Artek's the leader. He's like the commander of all of these men. So you've got these 7 aliens. They're all different species. And they fought in a war. And so they pretty much are like, I'm done with war. I just want to settle down, have a family of my own, live on this planet, you know, and just, you know, basically retire, you know, live as farmers. And so they go and Artek and all of them kind of like basically accumulate all of their wealth that they have and decided to buy this farmland. Who was the original owner of the farmland? He went and created the town, and so he wanted all of the women in that town to, like, you know, wear like old style clothing, like women obviously wore like dresses and stuff like that. And then you have where, you know, you marry men off, and of course, you know, you can't be the type of lady where you have children out of wedlock and all that stuff. It doesn't look proper. So it's essentially like things that were like back in the day and all that stuff. So Artek and his the other person he's with, Callum, they go into the general store, which Nellie works at. And so Nellie is like, you know, she's intrigued with Artek. She's intrigued with him. And, you know, they kind of like get to know each other a little bit that way. And then he comes back after how long, and basically, you know, like asks her to marry him. And, you know, Nellie's in the situation where she's like, you know, she's not having like a bunch of men banging down her door kind of thing, you know. Her father kind of wants her married off. So she's like, you know what? I'll take him up on his offer. I'll marry him. He seems like a nice guy. And so it's basically their romance. And like I said, it's very easy. It's very simple. It's not overly complicated. You know, they get to know each other, and then they kind of like soon become, you know, sexual and all that stuff. And things are kind of like, you know, happy kind of thing. And if there is any kind of conflict, it's usually like resolved within like a few pages. There's no like long, you know, stuff where you're like, oh my god, you know, kind of thing, you know. It's very simple. It like, if there's any kind of conflict, a few pages and it's like done, you know. Very simple. So this whole series is very simple, you know. It's very simple series. They're short, like almost like basically novellas. Novella size, because they're only like between like, I'd say between like 150 to 200 pages, you know. The last one was a little bit longer. It was around, I think, 200 pages or so. So the first one's Artek, and that one's nice. And then we had Benjar and Ruby. So essentially the brothers, the rest of the brothers kidnap these women. They kidnap them. And so with Benjar, Ruby's basically like, you kidnapped me. That's not right for you to do that, you know? And so, but she kind of gets over it for the fact that she was attracted to him, you know? It's like, it'd be a totally different story if you're not attracted to this person. But she was attracted to him, so kind of made it a little easier, you know? And the third one was Callum. Now, Callum, I'd say he's probably more of the elder, even though he's not old, obviously, but he's older than the other alien species. And Callum was pretty much helped, not really raise Artek, but like teach him how to like fight and take care of himself and all that stuff. So he's kind of like been overlooking, looking over Artek for like years, ever since Artek was younger and all that stuff. So they've kind of known each other for a long time. And so Callum was attracted to Pearl, and he'd see Pearl. Now, Pearl is, she's dealt with abuse. I thought this one was really sweet because Callum was very patient with her and gentle with her, because she dealt with a husband that had passed away, and the guy was just an asshole. He beat her and all that stuff. He didn't treat her very well. And so she basically needed someone to be gentle with her. And so Callum was really patient with her, really, really gentle with her, to where she could warm up to him and all that stuff. And this was where he did not kidnap her. She went and was looking for her sister. Her sister's Ruby, which is in book 2 with Benjar. And so she was looking for her younger sister, and she came across Callum. And Callum was like, well, you're going to have to stay with me for a little bit, because during like the winters, there's like a pass that gets really snowed down. So you kind of have to like bunk up for the winter for like how many months. So you better have like supplies in your home and all that stuff. So what happened is there was an avalanche, which I suspect it might be the brothers. Nothing's been said so far with, I just went and finished book 4. So it's a possibility book 5 or book 6 or book 7 might like tell the story of what happened. It's either a natural avalanche or something happened and it caused an avalanche. So that one was sweet with Callum and Pearl. That one was a sweet one, because you could see they very much were like, they grew up with younger people around them. So they, they're more of the eldest. So they've, they have that responsibility, the responsibility of taking care of others. And this is something I've had over the years. Like for years I've, cause I'm always been like the eldest in something, so I've always been the one to take care of others. And so, I kind of like, I felt that with these two, they're very mature and, taking care of others and making sure everyone is, is okay. And so it was sweet. Like I said, I've given all of these ones 4. They are cute stories, and you can get through them pretty quickly. And then the last one I've read so far in this series is Drakkar. Now, Drakkar is he's like a kind of like a dragon hybrid. And so this one was really sweet. I'd almost give this like 4.5 stars, because it was really sweet. I really liked Drakkar. And what was her name again? I did not write it down. Kitty. That's what it is. Now, Kitty, I would say essentially was used by a man. And she, I guess you'd say is a fallen woman and all that stuff, People kind of looked at her, a little scornfully, because it's like, she went and had fooled around with a man, and he didn't, obviously didn't ask her to marry him and all that stuff. So she went to this other town, and she ended up in this, this town that they were all in. And she gets involved with another man. Come to find out, the dude's married and has 2 other children. So I'd say she was a bit of like, too much of a light heart, too much of a, falling for guys bullshit, And so I kind of felt sorry for her there. Maybe she was obviously too trusting, and let her guard down, and this guy used her. And so the guy basically wanted to just keep using her as his little, you know, sex girl, you know, to have his sex with. Meanwhile, he's got a wife and 2 children, you know, that are living in his home. But he would go to her room. She would rent this room, and he helped her rent the room. So he can go and, you know, do stuff with her. And she didn't want to keep, you know, doing it with him because he was not treating her very well, you know, treating her basically like a, you know, WHORE, you know. And so he ended up knocking her up. And she was pretty much like stuck in this situation where it's like, well, I don't have a job. I don't have anything, you know, to provide for my child. So you're basically stuck with this scumbag. And so he was being really rough with her. And she had told him, like, you know, no, I don't want to do this anymore. You know, I don't want to be with you. And he was kind of like almost trying to force himself on her. And so Drakkar was watching this whole thing. You know, he was outside her window, kind of like watching it, because he like noticed her in the window and he was kind of curious about her. And because he is like a half kind of dragon, he flies and stuff. And so what happens is he sees the man being like nasty to Kitty. And so he breaks through the window and takes, you know, the guy and throws him out the window. And the guy had like a broken leg. And I'm just like, good for you, man. And so Drakkar is like, you know, trying to help her. And he ended up accidentally breaking her oven, which caused, you know, essentially like she'll freeze if she doesn't have something, you know, to keep her warm. And so Drakkar's like, well, I could take you to my cave, because he has like, his species is like, they pretty much like are solitary, you know, they've pushed to be solitary. His people, his breed of alien, they don't have like a family bonds. They pretty much like take the child as soon as it's like a year old and train it to be like soldiers and stuff like that. So you really don't have like any familial bonds. You don't create that. And so he was like, well, he wants to take care of her and her child. And it was just so sweet, because he went and he kind of like he knocked her out a little bit with this stuff that, you know, you spray it, and it's almost kind of like, I'd say it was probably like more of like a, oh, what's the term? I can't remember. There's like a chemical that you can sniff and it like makes you faint, you know, makes you pass out. It's a chlorophyll, something like that. So it's probably essentially sort of like that, where he knocked her out, and then, you know, he was going to go and like wrap her up and take her to his cave, and he noticed there was like a little bundle in the other room, and he's like, oh, it's a baby. And so he's like, well, we're going to take the baby too. And so he takes her and the baby to the cave, and it was so sweet because he was so good with the child and so good with Kitty, and just being like, you know, trying to be respectful to her. And it was such a cute story. That's why I said like I'd give that one like a little bit more, like a 4.5, because it was really sweet. And he was just so good with the baby. Like he would go and wrap the baby up and carry it around with him, and it was just like, oh my god, that's adorable. So I'm like, any stories where, you know, a woman, obviously she made a mistake and got together with some douchebag and ended up getting pregnant, and, you know, where it's like someone goes and takes over the role as like father, you know, and he was like, it was just sweet. It was just really sweet. So that one I really liked so far. I'd say that's probably my favorite so far of the series is Drakkar. But I liked the other ones too. I thought they were really sweet. So like I said, these are really easy to get into and to consume, and so but I don't feel like, I think it's good to read them in order, but I would say like if you went into like any of these out of order, I don't think you would be that confused, because it explains a little bit more into the story. But I would say you probably would be best to start with like book 1, you know, and work your way up. So the other books I ended up reading this month is I ended up reading this one that's called Too Sweet, a high school vampire romance. Now this is a young adult, so there's no sex in this, but it is a romance, and it was cute. It was a sweet story, you know, where it's high school students. And so we have Briar and Darcy. Now, I said it's young adult vampire romance. No intimate scenes. There's like kissing and making out, but that's pretty much it. So I said I don't get into young adult romance much, but I was intrigued with the synopsis. This was a little slow going, but once it started picking up, I got really into it. So I said Briar is a grump. She's more of the grump in the situation. And Darcy, he's a little bit more light, you know, more of the sunshine, and he's a vampire. Him and his brother, which are not, they're not biological brothers. They're more of like, it's almost like a stepbrother, because the other one's family ended up being murdered, and so Darcy's family decided to take in the boy and raise him. So they probably, you know, they've been like brothers with each other. So she coughed up an attitude a lot with her teachers and other students. She definitely was a problem child girl. I said, then Darcy comes along for like fake dating. And I said basically to make her ex jealous. And he is the sunshine that she needed. Like, when you have somebody who's very much a grumpy type of person, they need that sunshine in their life. They need like that person who's sunshine and happy, because it kind of brings the grump out. You know, it brings that grump out, and it makes that person happier. You know, positive people tend to help out the ones who are always negative. Like me, I've for years I've been more of a negative type of person, and so when I'm around more positive people, it does kind of like lift my mood and makes me feel better. So this one here, it's like I liked that Darcy was like really sweet with her. He was so good to Briar. Like, she'd cough up this attitude with him, and he would just kind of laugh it off. And then she finally got to the point where it's like she like wasn't holding him back, you know, and stuff, and she started to like being around him. I liked seeing their relationship build the more time they were around each other. I also like there was representation of type 1 diabetes in this story with Briar, and the way that insurance really makes you jump through hoops just to get life-saving insulin. I said I really liked learning more about the disease. It was a cute love story, and yeah, diabetes was definitely very much in the story, where Briar has type 1 diabetes. So, you know, obviously with type 1 diabetes, you have to have insulin. You know, usually people with type 2, it's usually has to do with, like, you know, a lot of people who are overweight tend to get type 2 diabetes. So type 1, a lot of times, usually you're born with it. Sometimes you may develop it a little bit older. So with her mother, you know, was a single mom. And so it's like, when you don't have great insurance, the insurance really fucks with you sometimes, especially when it comes to certain things. Like, they were like, oh, well, we can't cover it because of this brand, so you have to go with the generic in order for them to cover it. And it's like, they really put you through like the ringer sometimes when it comes to different medications and stuff. And you're like, really? For the amount of money that you all fucking get every month for people paying for your fucking service, you would think that these motherfuckers would not be so picky on certain things. Now, I know pharmaceutical brand stuff, you know, like the pharmaceutical companies make tons of money. And of course, you know, there's some things that I definitely think needs to be cheaper, you know, especially when it comes to life-saving things like insulin and different things like that. definitely needs to be more affordable because, you know, the pharmaceutical monies made plenty of money during the pandemic. So, you know, they don't act like, you know, that they need to have it that fucking expensive. It's like that one guy who owned like a pharmaceutical company, or he was like the CEO or something like that. And the motherfucker went and charged like how much money for like, what was it again? I can't remember. EpiPens. The slimy sleazeball went and jacked up EpiPens. So what happened? People went and started freaking out. And when it comes to those companies, they're like, oh, you make us look bad, so we're gonna fuck with you. So that's essentially what happened. You know, it was some kind of like insider trading or something he did, and I'm like, oh, you know, the other people who worked with him definitely fucked that dude over. So, you know, those companies, they don't want to be like, oh, you know, we don't want to look bad. You know, helps, you know, hurts their reputation. So that fucker ended up in jail. And I hope he's getting it really good in jail too. But when it comes to different things, it shouldn't cost that much for it. When it comes to, you know, I could see like type 2 diabetes for the most part, it can be, you can change your diet around, you can lose some weight, and, you know, you might end up having it to where you don't have type 2 diabetes. But, you know, people still need medication to help keep them alive. So when you have like these different companies that charge an arm and a leg just for you to, you know, have a medication, it's just ridiculous. It's greed. It is greed. You know, I definitely, you know, I'm more of like, I'm pro capitalism, but I also am not like pro capitalism where it gets to the point where it's out of control. You know, there definitely needs to be certain like, needs to be a cap to certain things, because these companies, all these like, you know, corporations should not be getting like so much money, so much greed. Meanwhile, everyone else is struggling. So there definitely needs to be like, you know, needs to be help with certain things. So that one there I thought was a good story. And yeah, it really pretty much like open things up to kind of like let you know like insurance companies, and then you look at the pharmaceutical companies, and it really just makes you like, you know, angry and turn your stomach, because there's some people who really need like this medication to keep them alive, you know, and you just kind of like get angry at the whole system the way it is. So I was glad to see that, you know, and the different things that, you know, people who have type 1 diabetes, the things they have to do to like, you know, make sure, you know, what their diet and things like that, you know, and making sure that, you know, there's some people who have like a pump, obviously a thing on the side, you know, that's attached to their body. So that way they're getting that insulin, you know, whenever they're low and stuff like that. Those are kind of interesting. And that kind of like told in here, like she had like this pump on the side, and who knows how much that shit costs, because I'm sure that's probably a pretty penny those fuckers like to charge you. So, I did not write a thing for that one. So I ended up reading The Android Who Seduced Me. It's an Unlikely Hero by Elle Taylor. I liked this. I thought that was pretty good. I gave this 4 stars. So this woman is basically, essentially running for her life. Her one boss, she overheard something, and her boss wanted her dead, so she essentially escaped and was trying to stay off the radar. And so she had this one friend who, for years, he's been developing this program to create like these robots, which are essentially like sex robots and all that stuff. So her friend's like, oh, well, I'll give you this sex robot and it can help protect you, because he knows how to fight and different things like that. And she's like, well, I don't want the sex robot to have sex with it and all that stuff. I'm not going to do that. I don't feel right about that. And so he's like, no. He goes, you know, it's there to protect you. So this Roma essentially starts to kind of like break her down mentally and all that stuff, and they, start getting involved in everything. And then there's other things that kind of come out in the story and all that stuff, but I liked it. I thought it was a sweet romance. I thought it was a sweet romance. It was interesting. It was different. And yeah, I ended up giving it 4 because I thought it was pretty good. I don't want to delve in too much because it'll like explain, like, give you spoilers and all that stuff. And I don't, I'd rather you just read it for yourself. But it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it for the most part. I definitely would check out like other books from that author, just to see, if they're any good. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I did enjoy that. And then I ended up, the last one I'll talk about is this one here. I gave it a 3. I was not a fan of this. I think I gave it like a 3.5. So I ended up listening to Make It Sweet by Kristen Callahan. Here's another one where everybody's like, this is such a good romance. And I'm like, why is it always like, how many people hype up a book? I end up reading it and I'm like, I'm not really a fan of it, So we have Lucien, Luke, and Emma. There were some parts that were kind of cringe to me. So Lucien is a former hockey player, and he developed a concussion syndrome. And so during high stress, he gets migraines, so he has to retire early. He had to retire early from hockey because of this concussion syndrome. And I said, that sucks, but he ended up kind of like licking his wounds and all that stuff and staying at his aunt's, essentially like estate. It's kind of like an estate, and it's in like, I think it's in like Montecito, which is like rich area for California. Rich. You are wealthy. You're celebrities. That's who lives there. The extreme wealthy live in that area. It's near like Santa Barbara, all that area. You have to have money to live there. Nice area. I'll give it that, but it's for rich people. And so, I mean, California in general is very expensive to live here, but there are ones that are like high wealth. Lake Tahoe is beautiful, but you're talking millions of dollars for their homes. Look in any of these, like any like retail apps, go and just type in like certain areas of California, millions of dollars for homes. I'm talking 10, $15 million homes. A lot. He is staying at his aunt's, and he has, kind of like done like the stuff on the side where he kind of likes to do pastries and things like that. And he's like really good at like doing like pastries. He's like a pastry chef. And so he's really good at doing it. Like he was doing it when he was like living with roommates when he was playing hockey. And so he, is doing this, and then he ends up singing Emma. Now, Emma is, I guess you could essentially say, she's an actress, but I would say she was a part of a show that might have been more of like a Game of Thrones kind of thing. Like, obviously it's a Game of Thrones where it shows like simulated sex scenes, nudity, things like that. So everyone pretty much, has seen her boobies, and so she was playing like a princess on this show, and her character ends up getting killed. So she, is pretty much done with that series, and she doesn't know what she's going to do now, with her career. So she has, I think it's like her mother or something like that. I think it's her mother that's friends with Lucien's aunt. And so she like says, oh, you know, you can go here and go kind of like take a little vacation away, like a sabbatical. So you can kind of like regroup and everything and figure out what you're going to do. So she ends up staying there. And her and Lucien kind of like start off like on the wrong foot. He pretty much is like a grumpy, you know, where he's got like an attitude. And so he ends up picking her up from the airport, and they basically drive to, they're like this like a state thing. And on the way there, he ends up developing a migraine. Well, she ends up helping him, and she drives the rest of the way. Now, he doesn't want to admit that he has a migraine, and she pretty much knows the symptoms of migraines because she's had some herself. So she helps him out and takes him to, you know, the Montecito area. And it's pretty much their relationship where, you know, they kind of like start off with, you know, not really liking each other to, you know, getting together. The things that kind of bothered me about this story was Lucien. I fucking hated him. I did not like him. He really irritated me because you're somebody who, yeah, hockey was your life. But you know what? Even the people who have been like popular players, they don't go forever. When you go into a sport, you have very little time there. Say you don't end up with an injury and you go and you have a career in like football or career in hockey or career in baseball. You're not there for a long time. So you end up like retiring at like what, 35, 40. You don't really go on to like in your 50s and 60s still doing fucking hockey or football or whatever. So it's like, dude, okay, your career was cut short because of this concussion syndrome. That should tell you right there, find something else that's going to make you happy. Find something else that's going to bring you passion into whatever you're into. And so it's like, you have the creativity as a pastry chef. You know how to do like these really delicious, desserts and stuff like that. So it's like, take that as a sign that this is your new passion. And he just kept like in his head, like, you know, I'm not happy. I would like to go back to hockey. And it's like, it's fucking hockey, man. You're on the ice. You lose teeth if you're not right, if you're not, careful. You could go and possibly get your throat slit open, or, because those skates are sharp. I know that I've seen like hockey players that have gotten like their neck cut open from the blade, and they're like sitting there bleeding all over the ice. So it's a violent sport. So it's like, you're going to go and keep like longing for this violent sport, but you have this creativity and this passion for being a pastry chef. But no, let's just keep complaining that you're not where you're at because, oh, I can't play hockey. Oh, fuck off, dude. He just got so irritating to me where I'm like, seriously? How many people have had to end passions for them at an early age because of an injury or something happens, and then they have to find something else that they're passionate about? That's a fucking life. You're not always going to have like, living your best life. Sometimes shit happens. And so for him, he constantly was like, I'm not where I want to be. And Emma, he goes and he does something which causes them to have a little separation, and she fucking takes him back, like open arms and everything. And I'm like, girl, you need to have that stupid motherfucker grovel, because he irritated me. And then he goes and he leaves her toward the end, do hockey, and then finally was like, getting his head out of his ass, realizing this is not where I want to be either. And it's like, fucking duh, I could have told your ass the whole entire fucking book. You have this passion and creativity to make food, to make pastries. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody can bake. Not everybody can go and create like these delicious dishes and things like that. You know, it takes like passion and creativity. Not everybody is, you know, a born pastry chef or a born cook. You know, some people just, you know, like try and they just, that's not their passion, you know? So for him, it's like, dude, you have something else in like food. Have that passion, you know? You're bringing joy to others by having your dishes, your pastries. You know, he would go and make stuff when she was over at the estate, and she'd be like, oh, this is so good. This is, oh, I love this. It's fantastic. And he loved how she would be like, oh, this is so good. And he got praise from that, you know? And it's like, that's telling you right there. That's your passion, you fucking idiot. But no, let's just keep complaining because he's not doing hockey. Even his friend in hockey was like, why are you here, dude? Why are you here? Do you want to die? Do you want to die? Are you suicidal? You know? You know, pretty stupid, man. Pretty stupid. So yeah, he irritated me. And so, yeah, for me, it was like she constantly praised him, you know, praised him for his, you know, his cooking, you know, his pastry stuff, praised him for his big thing, you know, in the bedroom, all that stuff, you know, constantly praising him. Wasn't good enough, you know, and it wasn't toward the end that he got his head out of his ass. And I was like, fucking finally, dude. But I was like, I'm done. I'm done. If he would have like turned it around quicker, you know, and realized, you know, yeah, okay, hockey isn't for me. Maybe if there was some other type of conflict that could have like separated them, but like that, I was just like, dude, really? You're going to give up this woman because it's hard to go and be in relationships when this person lives here and you live here, you know. Those relationships tend not to work out. Long distance relationships never work out. Rarely. There is the exception, but it's a rare case. And yeah, I was like, okay, so you're going to go and do this? For what, dude? For what? So yeah, that dude irritated the fuck out of me. So I was like, really? How is this book like 5 stars? This was both so good? Okay, sure. Yeah, this guy was just a horse's ass, and I wanted to smack him upside the head. But I'm like, okay, dude, I want to smack you in the head, but I realize that you have concussion syndrome, and that might kill you, so can't do that. But yeah, I just wanted to, you know, smack him. I was like, you're so fucking stupid, dude. But yeah, anyways, that's what I read for June. I'd say so far I've been really enjoying the Honey Phillips series there, the 7 Brides for 7 Alien Brothers. Like I said, it's lighthearted, you know, it's not overly complicated or overly deep, you know, and all that stuff, so those are really sweet. But I'm hoping that, you know, July I will go and, you know, have some more historicals and stuff like that. But yeah, that's it for this video here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. And I will see you all on the next video. All right. Bye.